Right, hello, welcome to another episode of FilmFellas. Rob's here. So we stole the way over from Germany via Nottingham to come and see me pop in and record a new episode. So what we're going to talk about today, Rob, top 10 favourite Mission Impossible
scenes. Individual moments where you look at it and you go, this is pretty cool. It's not just action sequences, it's what makes this part of the franchise awesome.
And I've gone digital, written my notes,
and I've gone a message which might get destroyed at some point in the future. Self-destruct, might it?
Right. So where we're starting?
Well, we'll start with, we'll do a countdown. We'll do the 10th and all the way up to the first one, and then we'll sort of chat over them.
Oh, well, I might not in any order, so I'll just kind of go for my 10, and then maybe let's debate what order they're coming in when we agree. Why don't you take everybody through your 10?
Right, so my 10th one, it's from Mission Impossible 2, which I think everybody will agree is the black sheep of the franchise.
It's an awful film.
Yeah, it's not so much a Mission Impossible movie as it is a John Woo action movie with Tom Cruise in it.
And listen, don't get me wrong. As you know, I absolutely adore John Woo.
Yeah.
Like, Hard-Boiled, The Killer. You know, Rob and I watched a lot when we were like 17, 18. So I'm down with John Woo. And I've got to be honest, I remember when Mission Impossible 2 came out, I was really excited to see it, but my God, what a bloated mess of a movie.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know that Tom Cruise acted as a producer, as he does for all of them, and he hired John Woo to take the franchise in a different direction. So you can't criticize him for doing that, but you don't, maybe you went too far.
Yeah. Well, especially when you consider all the great directors that were around at the time. This mic's going to annoy me. So like... Michael Mann, for example, was it
just Heat, hadn't he, at the time?
Yeah, and Michael Bay as well. I mean, Bayhem could have, arguably worse than John Woo, but Bad Boys 1 and 2 ain't bad movies.
Yeah, but they're not smart, are they? Mission Impossible is supposed to be smart.
Yes, okay, fair point.
But yeah, so my scene, and it's the only one in the top 10, and I think it is. I think I put it in partly to honour the Mission Impossible 2, but also to show that it is a genuinely wonderful moment. It's the Anthony Hopkins, it's the M scene where Anthony Hopkins is M briefing Ethan Hunt, and it's one of the rare moments in movie franchises where you have one of the world's biggest movie stars with one of the world's best actors.
Yeah.
So you've got I read a review of In the Line of Fire. It said it's the meeting of a great movie star and a great actor.
Right.
And I think this is condensed where, and as good an actor as Tom Cruise is, he's out acted by
Anthony.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly the same what happened in the first mission. The scene in the car with Vanessa Redgrave, where she just chews the scenery and the lines and her delivery and the inflection of her voice and everything. And Anthony Hopkins does the same here with Tom Cruise. His line delivery, if anybody's seen the Barclays Bank commercial that Tony Scott directed, is just terrific. Anthony Hopkins knows how to deliver a line. And it almost is like the Welshman giving the American a masterclass in acting.
He says a couple of lines just so brilliantly. He says the word cargo, the way he rolls it. But he also, and it takes some acting gravitas to get away with the absolute most sexist line in the franchise. and he does it, and you know he's doing it, and he's got a wry smile, but and he does that line really well. And he does the, this isn't Mission Difficult, is it?
Yeah, this isn't Mission Difficult, it's Mission Impossible. Difficult should be a walk in the park.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And so I think it deserves being in the top 10 for me.
All right, okay. I mean, it does have some great, like, it's a very well-written scene, I'll give you that. I'm going to start off with, I've not picked anything from the second mission. I've picked 2 from the first mission. It was potentially 3, but I felt it was going too heavy. I mean, I'm a massive De Palma fan, and I actually think De Palma really shows his genius in some of these scenes. And the first scene is the aquarium restaurant scene.
Right, yeah, I've got that.
Which I just think is a masterclass in directing, acting. The cleverness of that scene to make you want to go back and watch it again. Is incredible, and the second one is the data vault.
Well, come on then.
But aquarium. What do you think of the aquarium?
I call it the restaurant scene, but it's the same thing. I call it. It's my number 5. I mean, firstly, you've got to look at it from this is how to use a Dutch angle. Absolutely. And it's very well directed for lots of different reasons, because it makes you want to rewatch the whole movie. It makes you want to go back and say, when he's working it out, that's my phone, I'll just turn it off. When you watch the whole movie, you go, actually, I see the clues. I didn't see them before. And that's what's smart. Because one of the things I dislike about one of the plot holes of franchises, which this doesn't do in this scene, is when you are invited to rewind it, you get moments as just done for the rewind, whereas that doesn't it sets it up, but you don't even notice. There's one scene I remember when I watched it where there's a couple on the bridge and he touches his ear. It's shown and then it's shown a second time, and I did think that seemed a little out of place, and then you realise why. But the restaurant scene is done, and I know that Kitteridge is now in the new, and it's done that he's the baddie. And if you watch it, he might still be a baddie, he might not be the baddie, and he might have an ulterior motive. And that's all masterclass directing, because you know something's off. You just don't know what it is or what. And I also like how you can see Tom Cruise working it out in his head. You see the acting there. You see.
Well, I actually think in this scene, Tom Cruise actually shows what a good actor he is, because the kind of the range of emotions that Cruise goes through from the start. Obviously, he's coming in to this scene shocked, wounded, upset,
exhausted.
Yeah, exactly. But he still has the awareness to understand what is going on and how he's being played. And I think the way that the scene builds up to the glass moment with the chewing gum and the escape, it's just brilliant. It's a very short scene, and it's almost like just a very blink and you'll miss it action piece.
Well, also it is short, but that's because they keep the dialogue clipped, and they do it so that we, the audience, aren't patronised. So he doesn't say, "I'm going to take you back to headquarters." He says, "I'll take you back to Langley."
Yeah.
So it makes us have to understand what Langley is, but we know this from all other movies. So it cuts away a lot of the exposition, and it talks like you think that spies would talk. So that's why it's also very tense, because they compress the dialogue, and it's all close up, it's all Dutch angle, and you know that there's something wrong, and then it has a nice explosion, and then a bit of Tom Cruise running. Can't go wrong.
So we agree on that being in the top 10. What about the two scenes that I wanted to put in was the train scene, which at the time was very, very cutting edge. It wasn't done practically like the train scene in the new movie. It was done in a studio, but the realism of that scene, I still do think it looks pretty damn realistic. But I just feel that the safe scene, with its tension and the inventiveness of it, and it is pretty iconic.
Well, it's my number one.
Is it? Right.
I wanted to. It's my number one for a couple of reasons. One, this is what the franchise is, and without it, there won't be the franchise. And if I say to you Mission Impossible, you hear vault scene.
Yeah.
And it's also one of the few movies I could think of where the main action hero doesn't speak. There's about, I think it's 11 and a half minutes, and he's got no dialogue. There's some dialogue from Luther. And I thought the only other movie I could think of that does a similar thing is the opening scene of Casino Royale,
right,
where Bond doesn't speak at all.
Yeah.
But
apart from Don't Touch Your Ear. He says something.
Yeah, but I mean, once the action gets on with it.
Yeah.
And I think, how many other movies has the main action hero go with no dialogue for so long?
Yeah.
I mean, John Wick kind of does it, but it's all sold by Tom Cruise. It's all good. Now, I know that there's some plot holes with it and some issues with it, but it's also a very visually easy to understand what's going on. I've shown my 8-year-old it. It's not offensive. It's not violent. There's no blood and guts or swearing or anything, and absolutely you know what's going on.
Yeah.
So it's my number one.
So I then jumped a mission, even though I do like the scene around the Vatican, and actually the bridge scene. The bridge scene is a very well orchestrated action scene. I actually then missed out anything from Mission 3, but I know you've got a scene from Mission 3.
Yeah, I've got the opening scene It's the only mission that starts halfway through as a cold open and then goes back. And I picked it because Tom Cruise absolutely outacts it. I think one of the problems with the franchise, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later on, is Tom Cruise is so big and he's so megastar. He's so, I mean, you forget ultimately he's a good actor, and the whole scene is done by the quality of Tom Cruise's acting. And it seems to be, and I think it's the only part of the franchise as well where the character is duped by another person wearing a mask.
Right.
And I have a big problem with the mask in the franchise. I think because they're too good at the masks. I always think it's lazy writing when, if you could do what the character can do, would you do what the character does? And if you say no, then it's lazy writing. The masks are an absolute Duke's ex machina. Get out of it. We can turn in a 5'11" Doug Ray Scott into a 5'7" Tom Cruise, change his body shape, his dental work, to a woman who they've both had an affair with, and they can do everything. And they used. It must be a thing from the TV show. I've never seen the TV show.
Have you not?
No.
The TV show's great,
but you can tell that it's not Tom Cruise in a mask. It's the actor doing it. And that's a problem because they're too good, which is why I do like that scene, because it kind of conveys, if they are that good, Ethan would be duped by them as well.
Yeah. The thing about the TV show, you've always got to remember. I always remember there's a chapter in Leonard Nimoy's book where he talks about Star Trek 3 and how they worked incredibly hard to it not be a Kirk and Spock movie. And he went back to his time on Mission Impossible, where they worked really hard to give each crew member a kind of a moment where only they could do it. And and that was very much taken from his Mission Impossible days. And if there's any criticism of the latest films, really, it's that, has that been a little bit lost?
Well, interesting.
They are just Tom Cruise vehicles, which you know they are. Just be careful when you're banging on the table. We're getting a lot of camera shake.
Well, one of my other parts of Mission Impossible franchise, the first one, I know we've moved on to the third movie, is the embassy scene. And I really like it. It's my number 9. I call it the party scene, the embassy scene, because each individual team member has a defined role.
And that's where I think De Palma understands it more than any other director, because I think De Palma obviously grew up with the Mission Impossible TV show because of his age, but I think he then over kind of pay tribute to the film, you know, when it kind of comes later. But I mean, listen, I love the first Mission Impossible. If I was going to rank them, it would be in my top 3.
Well, not for me. I think it's, with the exception of number 2, it goes 2, then 1, 3, 4, 5. They build. They absolutely build. But the first one is a different kind of movie. It's
a spy movie.
Well, it's a run of they seem to be doing what spies you think real life spies. It's a run of the mill sort of grinding work, but also it's Tom Cruise in a mask. It's not an actor, so you believe it, and it invites you to go back and rewatch it, particularly in reference to the restaurant scene where you see a guy, the waiter behind, and all that, and it's wonderful. And there's a lot of really good POV shots, and I don't think the franchise uses POV shots in any other episode. So it's very, very good. And it's also kind of grounded because it's spies investigating other spies, not trying to save the world from a nuclear war and stuff like that. So love the first film, and that's why I've gone on the party thing. But again, referencing back to what we were saying, the opening of Mission Impossible 3, it's all Tom Cruise is selling it, and he absolutely.
And so, when you're saying about the opening, what are you saying about the bit with his wife?
He's chained up off the rabbit's foot, and the baddies torturing for the information. That whole thing before we hear the soundtrack, the mini mission.
Out of all the Mission Impossible films, I guess that is a very unique opening for the films. And I can see it. I guess it grabs you. I guess the one thing is it grabs you. Have you got any others out of?
Yeah, well, because I've got I wanted to include a big sort of chase fight action sequence, and I picked the Lindsay rescue.
Yeah.
From Mission Impossible, and I picked it for a couple of reasons. One, it's the exact kind of opposite to the party scene. So we've got a team, each having their own defined roles and working as a team. But rather than having witty banter and kind of run-of-the-mill grunting spy stuff, we've got machine guns, explosions, cool gadgets, and all that. So I like the way that the two play against each other.
And I would say the third one is closest to the first one in terms of people having to have roles.
Yeah.
People performing certain roles.
Yeah, they have a task in their mission, don't they?
And I did the Vatican scene where they kidnapped Philip Seymour Hoffman was really scraping into my top 10. The problem is with Mission Impossible is the films since Ghost Protocol have had so many amazing set pieces.
They have, but they also have the set pieces, then the story to attach to, as opposed to having a story with set pieces.
Yeah.
And what makes number 3, the Lindsay rescue so good for me is she dies. It's an absolute shocker, and it's so well done because it references back to the opening when his wife dies. So when this story starts again, and you find that it's his wife, and you absolutely believe she's dead because they've just killed Lindsay. So it works well. So that's why I've included it in my top 10. Not necessarily because in itself it's a good scene, but because it works
how it impacts the scenes in the later movie. Stop banging on the table.
I'm in a movie.
You keep shaking the camera. Right. Okay. So, I skipped 3, and I went straight into 4. And I've gone the Burj Khalifa stunt. The reason why I've put the Burj Khalifa stunt, I think the Burj Khalifa stunt is a turning point in the entire movie franchise, because I think it's a light bulb moment for Tom Cruise.
Right, I'm gonna absolutely agree with you and absolutely disagree with you.
So I think it's a light bulb moment in the fact that I think the praise that it got and the effect that it had on the box office performance of the film, because it was the scene that everybody was talking about. And it was really the first time. I mean, we'd seen Tom Cruise. He's always been a very physical actor. But I do believe this is the first time he'd done something which was what I would define as WTF.
Okay, all right. Yeah, no,
yes,
I absolutely,
you are a little bit crazy. I mean, if anything, you could argue it's the turning point that's ruined the franchise.
Yes.
Because it's now become all about, what's Tom Cruise going to do in this?
This is it, you see.
But I do think it's such a terrific scene.
I know, but it's in my top 10. It's number 7. It's exciting, it's beautifully shot. I love that there's a sandstone behind, so we've got like a visual countdown as well as the time that we've got to change all the locks and stuff like that. But you're absolutely right, it's a defining moment, but it defines it. This is the problem with that scene. You are not watching Ethan Hunt.
Yes.
You are watching Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
And obviously with Tom Cruise being the producer, he said, I'm the world's biggest movie star. I'm going to climb the world's biggest building. And it doesn't need to be the Burj Khalifa. It just needs to be a skyscraper. But they're absolutely selling Tom Cruise on the world's biggest thing. And that's where you stop watching the movie and you start watching Tom Cruise.
I totally agree with you. But it's such a fantastic scene. I guess the problem with it is the stuff that comes before it and the stuff that comes after it is so massively underwhelming. But that is what they massively fix with Macquarie. Now,
well, they're doing the door. I think what happens is you do stop watching Ethan Hunt. Macquarie tames that down a little bit, but you're still always watching Tom Cruise, not Ethan Hunt.
But out of when I did my list, okay, I think I would argue that Fallout is the best in the series.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think Fallout is the best in the series. But for action scenes, here's what I chose from Rogue Nation. Nerve gas plane, Austrian opera, underwater data heist, car chase, which then goes into a bike chase. And it's essentially, you've got all those great scenes. If anything, the ending and the chase through London is actually a bit of a damp squib compared to everything that's come before. Yeah. But honestly, that nerve gas plane start at the in Rogue Nation It's like saying, right, you love that bit in, Ghost Protocol with me dangling on the skyscraper. Well, here's me dangling on the side of a plane.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not. You like Ethan Hunt. You like Tom Cruise.
But and I get you. It's now separating the actor from the character. But to be honest with you, Tom Cruise is Ethan Hunt.
Well, he is, but it's like this. I think Protocol came out the year before Skyfall. I want to tell you that it might not be, but you don't watch Daniel Craig, you watch James Bond. Yes. You don't watch Ethan Hunt, you watch Tom Cruise. Yeah. Now, maybe that's what makes the franchise so successful, and ultimately it's a business, isn't it? But we're not discussing that. We're discussing it as a franchise, as a movies. And he obviously went, I want to fly on a plane. Yeah. Write me a scene where I can hang on the side of a plane. Write me a scene where I can go.
Well, apparently that is how they've approached the latest movie as well. Is that apparently Tom Cruise, when him and McHugh got together to discuss what they wanted, the new Mission Impossible scene to do, the first thing that they both discussed was McQuarrie saying, "I want to crash a train," and Tom saying, "I want to drive off a cliff on a motorbike." So let's work out how to get them in. And I guess when you're approaching the film, listen, look, they're two big boys with lots of money and the ability to exercise dreams. So if you're given this huge amount of money and you've got the talent and the resources to do it, and doing X will mean that you make an extra 10 million, then you're going to do it.
Well, I can't criticise it for that reason, but Burj Khalifa is the turning point where it ceases to be a Ethan Hunt and starts to be a Tom Cruise. And I think I've been watching a lot of the press releases for the new movie, and Simon Pegg says you're invested because it's really Tom Cruise. It's a sense of peril for the character and a sense of peril for Tom Cruise. Yes. And that's what it's sold on, absolutely. But ultimately, we're not going to see a Tom Cruise movie. We are supposed to be going to see an Ethan Hunt Mission Impossible movie. Do you know what I mean?
So, in short, essentially, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 of my. I'm going to I'll merge the car chase into the bike chase as one thing,
right?
But essentially, 4 of my favourite scenes come from Rogue Nation.
Well, I don't like the underwater scene.
Why not?
Well, I mentioned in the other podcast, all water scenes have the same sort of thing where they're going to run out of air, so there's no shock value. There's suspense, but no shock. The other thing is, whenever you're a kid and you do this, you try to hold your breath like the actor does. And when you see how they're cutting it and all this sort of stuff, we can't hold his breath like Ethan Hunt can.
Right. So I don't disagree with you that you know what's coming. I think this is where McQuarrie shows what a brilliant director he is.
Tell me more.
Because the way he does the whole thing with the sound effects, the music cutting back, and the way that he drifts away from the camera, that whole craftsmanship of setting the Ilsa rescue, and then when she suddenly grabs hold of him, I just think is a proper,
you've got, I love it. But also you've got 2 major plot holes in this scene that I can't not watch it without seeing them. The first is there is no reason for Benji to be there at that time. Benji could do it. They're trying to change the computer. Benji could come in 10 minutes later. He could even not even go until they've done it. And the other thing is, you're going down with a yellow card to swap it with a yellow card. You know he's going to drop them. You know why not just mark on it? This is the fake one. Or, the build.
Listen, I think if you wanted to really pick holes in things, you could go through the entire Mission Impossible movie and pick a lot of holes.
They're not real.
I just love it because I think the craftsmanship of that scene and the way it's done is just superb. I mean, if you think, we've had these types of scenes before. I mean, you could compare it to the scene in Mission Impossible 2 where he skydives through the top of the skyscraper. They're essentially similar sort of things. It's just one is underwater, one is a... But I just think it shows what a great director McQuarrie is. And I really, one of McQuarrie's films I always really rated that bombed on release, but I remember seeing it on home DVD when it came out, was The Way of the Gun.
Okay.
And
Ryan Philippe.
Yes, and Benicio del Toro. And it's such a great, really well-crafted movie, and you can see elements of, that Macquarie is a very intelligent filmmaker, but I think also as well, Macquarie knows that how to play upon what audiences are expecting. So yeah, the audiences are expecting him to run out of air. They are expecting, something to happen with Benji, and they're only just going to get it in time. The part of the reason why that scene works is because of your expectations, and Macquarie plays with your expectations, and it's like, yeah, somebody's going to get him. Somebody's going to get him. Oh my God, they're not going to get him. They're not going to get him. He almost stretches the elastic band right to its limit, and then lets it snap. And it's going to snap, but he really And I think that's his craftsmanship. The way that then that scene goes into what it's actually. If you want to go into little moments that rival your Anthony Hopkins scene, I actually think then the moment from when Simon Pegg gets electrocuted to them getting in the car is a beautiful.
It is, but again,
scene.
It's this,
and it shows that Tom Cruise can do comedy.
Oh no, I'm not. I'm criticizing that, but again, the plot hole exists in it. They come out. They've done this whole thing to get a disc, and Benji gives the disc. Now, Ethan Hunt is supposed to be super mass strategist. They should have given her a fake disc. There's no reason to give her the genuine article. We only discover later on that that she didn't delete it, and that Benji's made a copy. But Ethan Hunt should be top of his game. He should suspect her to have ulterior motives, and he should set her up for that, and he doesn't. He misses.
Listen, Mission Impossible wouldn't be the first movie to be held up for the crime of things happening just so the plot can happen.
No, absolutely not.
But the way that car chase then with Benji and with Tom Cruise and Simon Pegg, I just think it's fantastic. It just makes me smile.
And it has got some comedy moments in it.
It's got some great, the whole thing where Simon Pegg says, "I'm okay, I'm okay." It's got some lovely moments, and the way that then segues in that bike scene, the bike chase, has this one shot in it where the motorcyclist pulls out the gun, and it's a the lens that he uses, and you see the gun right at the camera. It almost has like this, almost like 1970s spy film.
Gun barrel.
It does, and the way that whole, I presume it's like 20 minutes long from the safe to the end of the bike chase. Is probably 3 just really thrilling. You're like, holy crap, what are they going to do?
Yeah.
If anything, the end of that bike chase, because we don't get anything then until really the London chase.
Scene, isn't it?
It's kind of almost like you're on a high, you come back down, and it's like, well, wow, how are they going to end this? But actually, the London scene it's good, but it's not of that height. You're on the edge of your seat, you're laughing.
Yeah,
I just think those 3 scenes for me are just straight away go into my top 10, which then leads me into my Fallout, which I think Fallout is the best in the series.
I do, yeah, absolutely.
I think it's absolutely terrific. I absolutely love the convoy attack scene.
No, again.
Do you not like that?
Right.
See, I like the way it goes with when Tom Cruise is imagining it and what will happen.
I love that. Yeah,
and then it goes into. So I'm taking it from that moment where Tom Cruise is imagining what's going to happen all the way through to actually what happens. Again, I just think it shows what a terrific filmmaker Macquarie is. But, to have the thought of, because he wrote it as well. So to have that foresight to construct that scene, and it's a very cinematic.
Oh, it is. Yeah,
kind of scene.
But there's 2 things. One, there's a plot hole where he starts the van, does Tom Cruise, and all the baddies fall out of it at the back. When in actual fact, he would have been smarter as he did. He drives into a wall and they get arrested. I think it would have been better written that way. But it is very clearly a scene. How do we get Tom Cruise on a bike? Let's do Tom Cruise, multi-million-dollar face driving through the streets of Paris. How do we do this? And I know this movie's come out afterwards, which is John Wick 4, which I know, it's fair that they've maybe taken inspiration from that and moved this one. But they do it better in John Wick 4 because they do it at night. and it adds an extra layer of tension. And
it also enables to hide how much CG is going on.
There is that as well. But really, that's what it is, though, isn't it? It's how do we get Tom Cruise on a bike?
But that's what the films have become.
But since
the fourth one.
I know, as I say, that's why the fourth one tips it over.
Yeah.
And again, I want to ride a bike through the streets of Paris. All right, write me a scene. There you go. It just it drips of that.
So in fact, one thing that we have to come back to actually is the Austrian opera scene. Actually, but I have Convoy Attack, the London Foot Chase where he breaks his ankle.
Oh, yeah, I've got this. This is my number 6.
Yeah, I think one of the things that there's a bit in that which I think is one of the things that really makes that scene work, which is the woman in the office with her look where she's like, go on then. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, it's like that morbid curiosity.
What are you going to do? Yeah.
Wants to see what
I've always wanted to do this myself. Yes. I'm glad you're here to do it for me. And I think that's it. And then the helicopter flight and bombs through, which again comes back to your thing of, look, it's Tom Cruise climbing up a rope. I know, but
let's go back to Austrian opera scene. So there's a couple of things that are going on here, which is why I absolutely loved it. And when I watched it at the cinema, I was like, wow, this has taken some of my favourite scenes from probably not terrific movies and done it better. And you can tell McQuarrie's a fan of. Well, you can tell he's a fan of Hitchcock because it's a massive homage to The Man Who Knew Too Much. But there's 2 other movies that it pays that have influenced it. One is the scene from which a lot of people say is the worst Bond movie ever, Quantum of Solace.
Yeah, it's not the worst movie.
But I love the Tosca scene. And you can tell that the Tosca scene has a huge impact on this. But the bigger one that it clearly is influenced by is Godfather 3, which the ending of the Godfather 3, which is set around the opera. And it's just, when you talk about well-constructed scenes, because there's various things going on, again, it's about McQuarrie. He really is a conductor of an orchestra, really conducting these fabulous things. I also like the subtle thing that Tom Cruise does here, where he takes the piss out of his own height.
Yeah. There's
a little subtle nod saying, look, I'm not afraid to be self-deprecating, and I quite like that. And the whole thing with the shot and what happens, and then how they escape. The whole scene is just terrific.
Well, I'll tell you why I didn't put it in the top 10. Yeah. I'll tell you why I'm wrong and I should have done. Because you're right, it's an awesome scene. And I can't fault it in any way. It's a wonderful introduction to the Ilse Faust character. And you know what's going on. And everybody's got a role. And I thought it was brilliant, but I didn't put it in. And then as soon as I wrote my top 10, I was happy that I didn't put it in. And then I regret not putting it in. Because it seems to take the Ethan Hunt character and do something that Ethan Hunt wouldn't do, where he's mission focused, his mission is Solomon Lane, and all of a sudden he abandons his mission to rescue the Austrian Prime Minister, Austrian head of state or whatever. And you think, well, Ethan wouldn't do that. And if he did do that, he would just pull the fire alarm and evacuate him. There is much safer ways, because he ultimately fails to safely rescue him. And that's why I didn't put it in. And then I realised that it's wrong for that, because later on they point out that this is probably what Solomon Lane wanted, and it's probably all to manipulate Tom Cruise. And even Jeremy Renner says, you just want to beat a guy who's constantly beat you at every turn. And this is a really good example, actually, of how maybe he was played. Maybe, so I didn't put it in because I thought it was a plot hole. And now I realise it probably isn't a plot. It's probably a very clever way around it. And I should have put it in my
It is an interesting thing, just to go off on a tangent before we kind of run over our 10 and finish up. I would argue that out of all the 7 Mission Impossible films, obviously we haven't seen the latest one yet, we've seen it in a couple of days, but I would argue that there's only really the 3rd one with Philip Seymour Hoffman where I really am kind of almost impressed with the bad guy.
Well, one of the things that is on my list we haven't gone to.
I think Sean Harris. I love Sean Harris as an actor, and when he was in the 2nd episode of Red Riding, if anybody's hasn't seen Red Riding, definitely go check out Red Riding. Sean Harris is a terrific, versatile actor, but I actually think he kind of, I don't know, it just doesn't do anything. I don't feel where Hoffman, because you've had Angelina Jolie's father in the first one, you've had Scott Sky in the second one, Philip Seymour Hoffman in the third one. I think it's Michael Nyqvist in the fourth one. Fifth one then is Sean Harris. So in two, and you could say Henry Cavill, but there's kind of he's not the main villain. I actually only think it's Philip Seymour Hoffman.
No, well,
this is who you really like. Oh wow, this guy is
right. Well, that's why for my number 3 for countdown, my third from the top is the suitcase fight in the car park in Protocol. Mainly because of the baddie. So as an antagonist the way through, he outsmarts Ethan Hunt. The Moscow scene, he turns out to be him in the mask in the awesome chase scene in the sandstorm, but ultimately he knows that he's finally sort of beaten, and what he does, he holds onto the suitcase and he throws himself. He kills himself. I know he doesn't actually die, but he kills himself. He believes so much in his mission, that he'll kill himself. Whereas most Bond villains and most spy villains and all this don't die for their cause. They get killed for their cause.
I think that is then mainly because it's a well-written character, but throughout the film, it really seemed being a threat. Whereas Hoffman in the third one, I think Tom Cruise is chasing his tail. He really has the upper hand, and I think Cruise knows it. Or Ethan Hunt knows it throughout the film. Okay, so let's wrap up.
I've got 2 more to go. Go on. Well, I've got the last one, which is the helicopter chase.
Yes, I've got that as well. I just think everything about it just works, doesn't it? It's that and the fact that the other members of the team are defusing the bombs. I think you've got the Sean Harris fight with Simon Pegg and Ilsa, and the lovely moment with his ex-wife. It's almost like it has to have this moment, doesn't it, where Ilsa is kind of almost has to have approval.
The new wife.
It's almost like, oh yeah, I like her. It's like, oh yeah, well that's all right. Yeah, you can get with Tom now. It's like I just think that's a very funny scene.
And I love the. There's a couple of moments.
Well, the bit with Benji where she's like, it's something about the pliers, isn't it? And she says, just checking.
Yeah.
But
I like the Tom Cruise acting. Firstly, I love I need to get rid of this payload. I love the moment when he works it out. It's all acting, and he moves his thumb and it's got the word payload. And then I love the expectation subversion, because you think he's going to drop the payload on the helicopter, and he absolutely doesn't. And you go, he missed, and all the way through. And it's absolutely Ethan Hunt. This is, to be fair, Ethan Hunt more than Tom Cruise in the helicopter. Desperation. And I love everything about it. The whole scene is just brilliant.
Yeah.
So it's my number 2. The only reason it's not number 1 is because I thought the vault scene more iconic, and therefore.
Okay, so from 10 to 1, then go for your 10 to 1.
Anthony Hopkins acting. Number 9 is the party scene where in the embassy. Number 8 is the opening of Mission Impossible 3. 7 is the Burj Khalifa. 6 is the rooftop run, which we didn't really discuss. But all the way through, I thought it'd have to have a running scene, and that's the best one. 5 is the restaurant scene from Mission Impossible 1. Then 4, we've got the Lindsay rescue. Number 3 is the suitcase. Ghost Protocol. 2 is helicopter chase. Number 1.
So I haven't put mine in order, but I struggle to put them in order because they ask me again tomorrow, and they'll be
you're not comparing apples with apples.
Yeah, exactly. So I've got an aquarium restaurant from 1, the Data Vault from 1, Burj Khalifa stunt, nerve gas plane at the start of Rogue Nation, the Austrian opera scene, then the underwater data heist, and car chase and bike chase, which I am merging into one. I mean, really, underwater data heist, car chase and bike chase, I see as one thing. It's like listening to, I don't know, it's like listening to Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness by Smashing Pumpkins. You can't listen to the first album without listening to the second. You've got to listen to the whole thing. So it's one album. And then basically Fallout, Convoy Attack, London Foot Chase, and helicopter fight and bomb defuse. And, just coming back on, because we did mention about London Foot Chase, didn't we, the whole thing. I think the fact he broke his ankle.
Well, again, this though is one of those you're more impressed that it's Tom Cruise running on a broken ankle than you're
Yeah.
impressed with Ethan Hunt's exhaustion.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you why I liked it, and it put it into whichever number I said, because ultimately we all want to be spies, and this is a moment where we reckon we could probably. I reckon I could probably run. You know, so when my kids play spies, they can play running. They can't fly a helicopter.
I'll tell you another reason why I liked it as well, because when he's hanging from the lift and Cavill puts the thing down, the last thing I almost expected it to be was the picture of his wife. I kind of thought that we conveniently erased her out of Mission 3 out, and the fact it's actually a callback was actually a bit of a like kind of divine
icing on the cake.
I bet when they wrote that, I bet they were like, oh right, now we've upped the stakes. So anyway, so that's our top 10. What do you think? Basically, put it down in the comments below, and you know, argue with us. What's your favourite top 10 scenes? And we're both seeing Mission Impossible in a couple of days.
Yeah, straight away.
And so we'll be back, kind of telling you our thoughts on Mission Impossible then. So thanks for listening. Hope the shaky camera hasn't annoyed you too much. And Rob will promise not to bang on the table so much next time. Rob, any parting words?
No, just looking forward to number 7. Really excited, and we'll talk about it when we've seen it.
Wicked. Excellent. Thanks a lot, everybody, for tuning in. Catch you later.